Hello and welcome to Nirmal Bang, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hira Dadia. We have with us Dr. Yasir Rauji, Managing Director and CEO at Glenmark Life Sciences, joining in. Yasir, welcome to the show and always a pleasure to speak to you. Yasir, my first question coming to you is, and in fact, I would wish you congratulations as well for this great milestone that Glenmark as a firm has taken. If you could just help us understand a few details about the IPO, how much are we raising, etc.
So, Hiral, thank you. Before I begin, thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to speak with you as well. As far as the IPO goes, the total capital raise is for 1,513 crore. So, of this, 1060 crore is a primary issue that is being raised by Glenmark Life Sciences, and that's obviously to propel our business. The remaining portion is basically a dilution by the promoter, which is Glenmark Pharmaceuticals.
Right. Right. And with all of this, in terms of the funds that are being raised, how are we planning to use the funds?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sure you would be aware, and it's being talked about in the media as well, that the primary issue is going to just pay off a debt, right, to the parent. But then let's look at it from an overall business perspective. What we need to understand is that while the debt was there, the debt was basically a business transfer that happened as a slump sale from Glenmark Pharma to Glenmark Life Sciences in January of 2019. Now, this was 1162 crore, of which we have paid down 362 crore already, and what is remaining is 800 crore, plus the servicing of almost 100 crore that we've done. So net net, the business has generated significant amount of cash, and in the last 2.5 years, and we've paid off a big portion of that debt. Now, what we would do, the plan is to pay down the debt entirely.
Mm.
And what that will help us to do, it will help us to invest a lot more in capacity as well as in raising the level of R&D that we do to then get into a different space in terms of more complex molecules. Because it takes a longer time to develop complex molecules. It's also, of course, a higher value area, but then it will also take some investment, to do that. So that's the plan. So you could look at it this way or that way. End of the day, what it does for Glenmark Life Sciences is it frees up capital for us to be able to invest that into the business.
Right. So with all of this, how is the anchor book looking like?
Uh, the anchor book was full yesterday, and we've had some very high quality investors. I'm sure you've seen, the subscription of the anchor book, the people that came in. For us, what is very encouraging and we feel very good about it is that these are players that understand this space. So they've been in the pharma space, the specialty space, and given that kind of sort of positive reinforcement of our, that gives us a very positive reinforcement for the business. So we feel pretty good about it, in terms of these funds coming in and giving us basically, it's a big fillip for us.
Mm. Right. So overall, let's get into, how business is from here on. Clearly, we are one of the leading developers and manufacturers of select high-value APIs, mainly into chronic, therapeutic areas, cardiovascular diseases, central nervous system diseases, pain management, and diabetes. If you could just help us understand where is our concentration in terms of business out of the entire range that we provide.
Sure. So basically, if you look at our business, right? I mean, it's a first. Let's talk about the Glenmark angle, because that's what people always want to hear, right? How much is the dependence on the parent? Now, historically, this is a 20-year-old business. So what started off as servicing Glenmark Pharma's needs eventually evolved into a very different business in terms of servicing the needs of many other pharma companies, and that's how we've added top customers. So we service 16 of the top 20 generic players in the industry. And while Glenmark Pharma has a pretty mature portfolio with us, which gives us 30 to 35% of our business, right, there is a significant portfolio, 65 70%, right, that serves services our other big clients, and most of the business from a geography perspective is in the regulated markets. So regulated markets are a much more stable business, simply because we have to provide not only the API as a material, but we've got to provide the confidence that we can continue to provide it from FDA inspected facilities, and all the documentation that goes around. There's so much documentation in terms of the API that that is needed so that the health authority can have the confidence that this company is doing all the right things to put the right kind of product, the right kind of API into the product, which is then going into the patient. So what this does is that it is not basically, Hiral, what I'm saying is that it is not everybody's game
Correct.
to build. I mean, I'll give you an example, right? I mean, when we develop one API, can you make a guess how many impurities we have to make, in order to get that API qualified? Just make a guess. I mean, it's one API, it's done with a chemistry, right? So we are talking, let me tell you, we are talking about anywhere from 50 to 100 impurities that have to be made in order to ensure that, we demonstrate that our API is free of these impurities. And if there are a few that come as a result of the process, and that we control them well. So this is a process that takes, 14 to 18 months, and our customer engagement starts very early. Now, when we do that, the kind of customer loyalty we are able to create as a result of that, right, is very significant. And that's why these top customers have been around with us for a long time. And they continue to work with us because they've built that confidence that Glenmark Life Sciences is going to be there when we need them the most. And this is why, this is how the business has got extreme stability, good margin profile, and we are pretty confident that it will continue. Added to that, in the last 3.5 years, we've built the CDMO business. Now, this is a contract manufacturing business, right, which is quite small now. It's about 8 to 10%, right, of our overall revenue. But considering it's only been 3 years and we've had, a small number of projects, it's grown quite nicely. So again, you will know that, many of the players that work in the CDMO business, right, basically are, again, talking about more stability on the business side, as well as, better margins typically. I mean, it's not, the rule, but, obviously, depending on the kind of project, we are working on and the longevity of the project, we typically see better margins on that business. So overall, when you look at the business, how we're positioning it, plus the portfolio, right, that is being built to support that business, we've got a significant, strength on both sides, the science, the manufacturing, which is together the back end, as well as on the front end in terms of the business. So all that put together puts the company in a very strong position, to be able to deliver in the future. And I think that's what the investment community has recognized. You talked about the anchor book. I mean, we've got some very high quality people who've come in and understood our business very well.
Right. So with this, to what I understand clearly, we have two key segments. One is the generic and complex APIs, as well as the second becomes the contract development and manufacturing. So between these two, currently, what's the kind of revenue mix that we have? And in the next 3 to 5 years, where do we foresee it?
Okay, look, I mean, given the sensitivity of the period that we are in, obviously, I won't be able to give you numbers, right? I mean, that you will understand for sure, right? But see, we are starting our CDMO business from a pretty small base. The question is that will that base continue to be there, and relatively will that grow similarly to the generic API business? The answer lies in the fact that when we look at the number of opportunities on the CDMO side, especially the end of life cycle projects that we are working on, there are many. And, we have a small number now, but what we are seeing, and there is a lot of activity going on, and these put together, I think, would give us a very solid base to grow the CDMO business, going forward. Uh, I believe that relatively speaking, it would grow faster. I'm hopeful that that would happen. But obviously, we can't predict, right? What will happen. It's a competitive space, but so is the generic business. I think the generic business is a much more competitive space uh, because there are a larger number of players. Okay, and as a result of that, right? But then we've sustained that competition pretty nicely, you know, and I think both the businesses, if anything, would grow at a very similar clip, if not one exceeding the other.
Right. So overall, from here on, any newer segments of, you know, businesses that we're looking to enter? I mean, not newer segments, but within a specific segment, any particular streams that you think we will be looking to manufacture, develop, for APIs as well as contract manufacturing?
Absolutely. So let me talk a little bit on the portfolio side.
Hmm.
When we look at the portfolio, what we have right now, and we've continued to build that. Okay, it's not as if we are taking a step back. So this entire sort of more complicated molecules, which then take us into a non-commodity space, these molecules will continue to be developed at Glenmark Life Sciences. We are not going to lose the momentum there, simply because it's an area that we understand well. Like I said, it's not everybody's game. And as a result of that expertise that has been developed, this platform needs to continue, which we will do. But then we've got to realize that, if a company is a 500 crore company, and you need to grow at a certain percentage, you need to do certain things. But when you're, touching 1900 crores already, right, then you obviously need to think, of doing bigger things and doing better things. And that's the kind of mindset that we've been applying over the last few years,
Hmm.
to basically ask ourselves that what next. Now the chemistry platform and the API business are huge opportunities for us, right? So when you look at the API business overall in the world today, right, it's $190 billion demand, of which 75 billion is just the merchant API market. Okay, and how many credible players or countries are there in the world? I mean, there are three centers today. There's China, there is Europe, and there's us. Okay, and apart from that, the sort of fundamentals in being able to operate an efficient business basically don't exist in most other parts of the world. And so the opportunity for us is huge, right?
Hmm.
Now, when we look at that opportunity, we see a lot of technology being developed by the European players in complex molecules. And they've done a phenomenal job. Okay. The question is, can we do that also? So, so what we've done is we've already started, we've already, put out molecules that are complex molecules. So we have in the iron complexes space, we've put out one molecule. We've got two more in the pipeline.
Hmm.
In oncology also, right, which again is a very big segment with newer molecules coming each year. Again, the potential in the market is huge. So what we've done is that we've started working in R&D on oncology molecules. And there's another area in peptides where we're going to start this year. So put together, what that will do is it will give us a much more enhanced portfolio to be able to sustain the growth from the base that we already have. Because it's clear, right? You get bigger, you've got to do bigger things, you've got to do more things. You can't be doing the same things and then expect that you will get the same kind of growth, right?
Hmm.
So these complex molecules are a big lever for us. Apart from the business side that I talked about, there is one more piece on the business side which I need to highlight, and that is, you know, we are working in the regulated market space. Now, the regulated markets are well known to people. You have the US, Canada, Europe, Japan. But then there are countries that are even more, are getting more and more regulated as we speak. So you have the likes of Brazil, Russia, Mexico, Korea, And these kind of markets are again very good markets. They have a pretty big demand for the molecules that we are in. And as a result, these markets have also become extremely high growth markets for us. So put all that together, and we are talking about the fundamentals on the market side, the opportunities that exist on the portfolio side, and the platform that we built is very strong, Hiral. I mean, this is the point. We built a strong platform, and on the manufacturing side, and that's where the capital raise is going to be essential, is that typically we've been spending about 50-60 crore a year, on the capacity side. Now, if I take away the maintenance capex, right, which is about 25 crore with R&D and quality, right, what is really left is that we've been investing about 30-35 crore, which is good, which has been good. It's given us the return. But now we've got to build a brand new facility, a greenfield. We've got to fund a brownfield expansion that has already begun in our Dahej site. And so when you put all that together, there is a significant need for cash in order to be able to sustain the growth of the business.
Mm.
And that's where we want to take the company, and that's why we've sort of put in this capital raise so that the company can then think a little more freely in terms of deploying cash.
Right. And that's a well-made point as well from your on. So yes, overall, I mean, yes, we do business in the domestic markets, we do exports as well. In terms of FY21, we are a little more than half of the revenues that came in from the domestic market. Is this a trend that is expected to continue, or is it one of the reasons because of the pandemic that this has been the trend in FY21? However, we plan to increase our exports versus domestic business.
Okay, there are two reasons, right, for these numbers. One is a more fundamental reason. See, I talked about the regulated markets in the space we are in. Now, we've got to realize that there are some top Indian companies who are our customers, and they operate, in a big way in the regulated market space. Okay, so I'm allowed to talk about Aurobindo, I'm allowed to talk about Torrent because we've taken permission from them. They are our customers. They are top-end generic companies. They're Indian companies. But they are global generic companies, and they operate in these markets. So typically, the APIs that we supply to them are largely for these markets. So while the rupee, the dollar revenue is reflected in terms of the export, in reality, the API that we supply to these global generic companies of Indian origin actually goes into the export markets. So in that sense, our business is an export business. But yes, direct exports is 50%, and this year it has been around 44%, right? Now, why that happened is because there was a larger demand from the domestic side this year, and partly it had to do with FabiFlu. Okay, so FabiFlu is a household name. I mean, we came in time in order to be able to handle the COVID, pandemic. And obviously, right, I mean, the API came from Glenmark Life Sciences. Now, basically, it was a game of speed. We had to develop the API, and we had to do it very rapidly. So it was done in a period of 3 months. I mean, we got the API done in 3 months. Were able to scale up very significantly, and that led to the domestic demand going up. Now, not that we didn't do Favipiravir business outside of India, right? We did a significant business outside of India. So we sold in countries like Russia, Turkey, Egypt, and Bangladesh as well. So the thing is that but the demand in India was very significant, and so this has led to a kind of a shift. But that's not a sort of trend that would continue every year. Typically, direct exports would account for about 50%, and exports to regulated markets through our Indian customers would be another 15-20%. So net about 2/3, in fact a little more than 2/3 of our business is a business concentrated on the global pharma markets.
Right. And overall, with regards to, I think almost 5 largest customers account for almost 55 to 60% of your total revenues in terms of operations. Is there a risk on that front? Because Clearly, I think we don't have any exclusivity arrangements or contracts with these customers, right?
Yeah, we have we have longer term contracts with the larger players, but again they are not very long. Okay, so on the generic side, our contracts are about 1 year or a little more than that. On the CDMO side, there are 2 year to 3 year contracts. So, but the point is the right point, that how come that customer concentration is so high?
Hmm.
Now, you see, what happens is when you work with the top customers, you're not working on a single project, right? You're working on multiple projects. So typically what would happen is these large customers would, take a significant portion, of our business. And the worry would be if after these five we had nothing else. So if there was a sharp drop from the five, and then the sixth one was way below, or the next five were way below, right?
Hmm.
Then that would be a challenge. But what we have seen over the years is that where we would have one customer or two, even not even two, moving away from the top five or the top 10, there would be, a significant backup of the next five that would come in and, sustain that. So at any given time, whether it's a product concentration or whether it is a customer concentration,
Hmm.
that would always be there in our business, because you know these customers are large customers. We have business. So even if, for example, the business were to continue, let me give you an example, right? The way it's going, it's very likely that the customer who is number 6 or 7 today, next year might come in the top five, and the fifth customer may slip down to number six,
Correct.
which means the growth continues, right? It's just that that concentration is a function of how much, how much we have in terms of how many players we have in terms of the top players.
Hmm.
That's the point.
Right. And overall on the R&D front as well, I think around little over 2% of the revenue is what we spend on R&D.
Yeah,
Do you think this is something which we will look to increase in time, taking into consideration, the portfolio additions that we could be seeing?
absolutely, absolutely. It will go up, because the thing is that, like I said, we are getting into this high value segments, right?
Hmm.
And the good part though is not, it's not going to go out of whack. Okay, I mean, it's not going to go from 2% to something crazy. I mean, we are still going to be well under 3%. Okay, well under 3%. So I mean, which is, see, today we do around 40 crore of R&D spend. Okay, now 40 crore is not going to become 100 crore. Okay, so 40 crore will go to about maybe 55, 60 crore.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then with the business anyway, growing, right, as a percentage, this is very likely to stay within 3% of our revenue.
Right.
So while, we would require, to spend, to put more R&D dollars, right, it would not, move things around as far as a profitability perspective. I mean, things would continue, but it's required, right? I mean, when we're talking about growing into a different level, we've got to make that investment in R&D, because the future depends on it.
Right. And in terms of expansion plans, Yasser, I think we're looking at a brownfield capital investment at Dahej.
Yeah.
What's the kind of timeline we could be expecting on that one? And secondly, with regards to the greenfield facility in Solapur as well?
Okay, so see, what happens here is that the brownfield is in the Dahej. It's an inspected facility by FDA. Now, uh, the good thing is that many of the products that we will be doing are products which are commercial today, but they have a relatively small business, but it's going to go up. So that's the large part of the expansion that's coming in the brownfield.
Hmm.
So now a lot depends in terms of how soon we are likely to see that expansion in the business. And seeing the way last year has gone, right, where we had to do a lot more volume, and you've seen it in the numbers, 22% growth, right? We obviously feel that we need to, accelerate that earlier timeline of around 2.5, 3 years, and try to bring everything within 2 years' time. So that is being seriously thought of, right? And very likely that that extra 200 kiloliters of capacity will come in much sooner, so that we are able to service the business end of the day,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Plus the oncology footprint also, right, is something that uh, we are very confident about. Okay, and not, in order not to be slowed down by the fact that our capacity is taking time, we also plan to push forward our oncology development, which is oncology block, which is also
Mm,
coming up at the Dahej. And this is part of the objects of the issue, both the brownfield expansion at the Dahej plus the oncology footprint that is being built out. So we believe that bringing it forward, by half a year to even a year if possible, is something we would be very seriously looking at. Coming to the greenfield site, what happens is that since it's greenfield, it takes time to build. It's not something that we could get done rapidly like we're doing the brownfield,
mm,
because you have to build all the common infrastructure, right, like the warehousing, the utilities, the environmental, the ETP plant. All that has to also be built. So as a result of that, greenfield would take time. Now, given the fact that it would take time, we don't want to wait. We want to get started this year itself. uh, because
mm.
at least we want a functioning facility in about just under 2 years time, so that this then becomes the next launching pad for us to be able to continue to service the business. That's the point. uh,
Right,
you know
right. And very lastly, Yasser, overall, in terms of the last 3 to 4 years, we've seen a CAGR growth of almost 46% in terms of revenues, 34% in terms of profitability, and we've been able to see a margin of almost 30%. Is this something which is sustainable going ahead?
yes, I mean, I think the CAGR on the sales has been around 16%,
Okay.
right, on the revenue. Right. The profitability has been pretty solid. Again, you see, Hiral, let's understand, okay? I mean, the fundamentals are not changing. Nothing in the market is changing to say that we would see a different demand pattern. If anything, the demand pattern is actually becoming better, right? Couple this with the fact that our portfolio mix largely remains in this non-commodity space, and
Mm,
so our ability to respond to headwinds from the outside, which would kind of come and hit our cost, is also quite robust. We would be able to sustain headwinds, as a result of which margins also should stay stable. Okay, but we can't predict the future, and in this kind of situation we cannot even offer you numbers. But given the
correct.
fact that, oh, my computer is acting funny, let me just quickly. Yeah. So the thing is that, given the fact that we've had a very clean track record, right,
Mm,
on the growth of the business, the sustainability of the margins, right, the way we are thinking about how the, and then see, another element that needs to be considered is that many of the molecules that are going to drive our growth have already been commercialized in a small way in certain markets that have opened up early.
correct.
So as the geographic growth happens on these molecules,
Mm,
those also add very significantly to the growth of our top line. You see, so all said and done, we are working not only dependent on the newer launches, where the market formation is something that has to occur. Here we have seen market formation happening, and then the larger markets in some cases have not opened up, which are going to open up
mm.
based on patent expiries and so on.
Right. And on the expansion front, are there any inorganic growth opportunities that we are looking at?
See, the idea of doing this greenfield, right, is to build the capacity on time. The benefit that we get is that we will be doing it at a much more affordable cost, and we will build a state of the art facility, right, something that will drive the CDMO business in a big way, and also help us on the generic side of the expansion. Now, if we were to sort of slow down on that, then at some point, it could come and sort of catch us unaware. So we don't want to do that. What remains to be done from the inorganic side is that unless there is something very significant, right, from the technology platform perspective, that would give us, an addition, a runway of, coming early into a certain molecular class, 2 to 3 years ahead with probably a business attached to it. I mean, we would then look at that seriously. But in our business, as long as we continue to stay ahead in terms of capacities, as well as the buildup of technologies, we should not see, any kind of inorganic kind of thing, because usually these are expensive, and then there's an integration element that also has to be built up and stuff. So frankly, I feel what we can do on our own is something that would be much more significant and relatively inexpensive compared to, if we were to go for an inorganic kind of play. But I'm not ruling it out. I mean, if something really good comes along, right, we would certainly not walk away from it. We would look at it very carefully, and see whether it's going to add value to the business in the future.
Absolutely. And I think growth opportunities are immense across. Thank you, Yasir, so much for joining
Thank
me
you.
on the show. Always a
Thank you,
pleasure
Viraj.
to speak to you. Great insights. Congratulations once
Thank you
again.
again.
And good luck for the listing process as well.
Thank you very
Stay
much for
safe.
having me on the show. Yeah.
Thank you.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel for in-depth interviews of India Inc. and press the bell icon so that you do not miss our updates.